Amanda,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harley.
Okay, I'll just resend them all.
All right, thanks. Amanda, I'm gonna send you a different email for her.
Okay.
But okay, just give me 1 minute. I texted, sorry.
Okay, you can just send it to me in the chat because we're going to be going live in about a minute.
Okay.
Marshall? Marshall? Hello?
We are live right now, Councilwoman Walsh.
Oh, sorry.
Councilman Johnson, they ready to start?
Is there going to be a countdown or we're ready to go?
We're ready to go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Karis Johnson. I'm the chairman of the City of Wilmington City Council's COVID-19 meeting. This is the first meeting of this new special committee. This committee was established by act of the council president as we needed a designated proving ground to talk about and discuss a lot of the hard-hitting issues that are affecting each and every block in our dear city. So this committee will examine these issues. You've heard a lot about these issues the past 2 months from City Council. You've heard about the working group. You've heard about a lot of these other issues, but this is where we will get to brass tacks and really work to not only get through this health crisis, but maintain our healthy communities. And then also worry about the recovery after we get over the hump, after the curve flattens, how we get our city back to where it was thriving before, where, we had an economy that was working. So from that, I would like to just begin our committee meeting. We have a few items on the agenda today. And I'd also like to introduce let my colleagues introduce themselves, starting with Council President.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hanifa Shabazz, President, City Council. Councilman Oliver, your mic is on, not on.
I'm sorry. Councilwoman Xanthi Alva, 3rd District.
Okay. Do we have Councilwoman Harley on yet? No. Okay. Okay, let's start with
Loretta Walsh, City Council at Large.
okay. Anyone else?
Yolanda McCoy, 6th District.
Rashima Dixon at large.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much. And I hope we're expecting a few others to hop on, but I don't want to delay any further. I wanted to give us a chance to talk about these issues that the few items that we do have on the agenda. Item number 1 on the agenda is an update on the federal stimulus funding and Karis funds to the City of Wilmington. I believe there is a representative from the mayor's office to give an update.
Yes, good evening, everyone. It's Tanya Washington, Mayor's Chief of Staff. And I will give you a brief update on the Karis funding. Unfortunately, there's not a lot to report other than, the fact that we were awarded certain funds, but we have yet to receive them. As you know, the state of Delaware received $1.25 billion. Of that $1.25 billion, $323 million was awarded to Newcastle County Executive Office to disperse to the local municipalities. Thus far, we have not received the funding from Newcastle County. However, County Council is voting on approving the disbursement of those funds.
Excuse me, Tanny Marchette. Okay, no, Harley was on the LA. She said she just got it. She was texting me saying she's trying to get in. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So of the 323 million, the county executive in an earlier press release said that he was going to disperse approximately $5 million to local municipalities. And that would be based on per capita for each individual city. We anticipate to receive no less than 2 million. So far, the city has requested reimbursement for approximately $1.4 million. Like I said, County Council is voting on the disbursement of those funds this evening at the County Council meeting. The other funds that I can report on, earlier, City Council approved Bureau of Justice grant for the Wilmington Police Department in the amount of $694,000. They have received those funds. Those funds are really associated with overtime costs, and he can draw down on those funds. It has a lifetime of 2 years to draw down on those funds. In addition to that, on May 28th, this Thursday, City Council will be voting on the Community Development Block Grant that was awarded through the CARES Act. This was an additional close to $2 million that was awarded to the city, and City Council has to approve receipt of that grant. Once that grant is approved, we'll be able to draw down on those funds as well. And that's basically it. We have no, I always have staff looking out for federal funds, particularly related to the COVID pandemic. But so far, we've not received any funds to date. Just keep in mind that these funds are based on reimbursement of expenditures that the city has accumulated associated with the COVID pandemic. So that's basically all that I have at this time. I'll entertain any questions.
Yes. I just wanted to start off, Chief of Staff Washington, and again, I appreciate you giving the full, kind of play-by-play, kind of where we are right now. And it's my understanding that everyone talks about, I guess, the county allotment that the county has. It's my understanding, I guess, recently that the state has been talking about getting some of those funds as well. So would that affect, if the state receives some of that $300 million, would that affect the portion that the city gets?
Well, I mean, and I'm getting this secondhand, so I didn't get it straight from the governor's office, but it's my understanding that they want to be reimbursed for some of the testing that has occurred throughout Newcastle County that the state has already paid for. I don't know what that number looks like, but I have heard that they want to get reimbursed for some of their expenses as well. Okay. Sorry, I apologize.
No problem. And just another quick follow-up. It's another quick follow-up, Chief of Staff, is in terms of this funding, and I guess I know County Council is voting on it. When should we expect it to, if it's approved, when should it actually hit the city? When should we actually receive those funds?
From Newcastle County?
Yes.
I'm not sure. We sent the request over. We sent the letter over about a week and a half ago. So they have all our supporting documentation. I hope it's not a long, exhaustive turnaround process because as I understand it, the funds have to be expended by December. Everything that they received. If you don't spend it by December, then you have to return it. That's my understanding of it. So I think they want to get it out as quickly as possible.
And then just another quick follow-up. Is there any intel from DC about the HEROES Act? I know that passed the House, but that would provide local and state funding. Is there any indication that's going to go once Congress comes back?
I can only speak to the fact that there's a significant concern with the HEROES funds that the county executive wishes to award. It's my understanding that there's been some conversation with the Attorney General on whether that's an eligible expense. Those HEROES funds, meaning the hazard pay that the county exec was to disperse. It's a little bit more complicated for the city of Wilmington for the simple fact that in addition to police and fire, some of our first responders, we consider to be the sanitation workers as well as L&I and some of our parks and rec employees. So the way that I understand it, these funds are restricted to police and fire. But the city contracts as it stands right now, we do not have a clause in there for hazard pay. So that's another question. How do we really receive that? You know, what does that do to the city? You know, it's something that will need to be hashed out before we actually receive those funds or decide to accept them.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief of Staff. I believe there's a few questions from my colleagues. Councilwoman Harley.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Councilman Johnson and Chief Washington. My question is regarding the, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So my question is regarding the Cdbg grant, which is great that we're getting that. And you had mentioned that we will be voting on that Thursday. Now,
Yes.
Is this in addition to what we usually get?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is in addition, this is all related to the CARES Act funding. This was the first phase of the CARES Act funding being released. These CDBG funds should be directed to rental assistance programs, utility assistance. Why am I forgetting one? Utilities, rental, and one is just slipping my mind, but it should be directed to the individuals in those organizations that assist low-income families, particularly as it relates to this COVID. So yeah, we've received probably about 5 applications from various nonprofits to actually draw down on that fund so they can get they can get on the ground running and get that money out to the communities.
Okay, so you definitely answered my next question because I was going to say, I wanted to make sure I understood you correctly. First of all, that this was CARES Act funding, and then did you have an idea as to who was going to get the funding? And so, based on what you just said, it's the nonprofits that are actually out there doing
the work.
Doing the work. I guess like Habitat would be one of them, right? Yeah, and maybe Eastside Rising will be one of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's my, the last count that I had was about 7 organizations that had applied for the funding. I'm not sure exactly which ones they are. I don't have that list in front of me, but they're ones that we typically deal with that we know that that can easily track the money and get it to the areas of the community that need it the most. So,
Yes, that's great. And my last comment I want to make is that the reason why I brought that up is because hopefully, they will be getting some of those fundings, those organizations that I just mentioned, because as you know, over on the east side, we have those projects over there that those particular organizations / nonprofits are working on. So that would be great. Yeah, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilwoman Harley. I believe we have Council President Shabazz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief of Staff Washington, the letter that you sent to Newcastle County, did you have to specify what the intention of use of monies that you're asking from Newcastle County? Did you have to specify what you intended to use that money for? And if so, what was the intent?
Yeah. So the bulk of the requests were reimbursement for personnel. So, for those individuals that had to quarantine or those that tested positive, we also have reimbursement costs in there related to the PPEs that we've already purchased. So the total reimbursement request at this time is $1.4 million.
Okay.
That's what we spent thus far.
Okay, and as other expenses occur that fit into the category of reimbursement of expenses, that number would continue to send that to Newcastle County till we get to our our total allotment. I
Yes.
pray we don't run out of money.
That's correct. This was just our first request. And so what I have is I have an Office of Emergency Management and our department heads keeping track under a separate category that's labeled COVID. So all of our COVID expenses can be extracted pretty quickly and put into a spreadsheet and sent to Newcastle County.
Could I ask going forward, you can ensure that the chair keeps this copied on that so we can keep abreast of it?
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments from members of council about the federal and CARES Act funding? Councilwoman Harley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My last question is to Chief Washington, that when the decision is made on those nonprofits that are getting the funds, can we get a copy of those names of those nonprofits?
Yep. It's
Okay.
public information, no problem.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
thanks. And the only reason why I'm asking, because of course, you know, when you're in conversations in the community, like I always like to let people know the good work that we're doing. And when we're continuing to do more, you know, it's always good just having accurate information and updated information. So that was my reason for wanting to know. Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
sounds good. I'll get that to you as soon as I get it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilwoman McCoy?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, this is to Chair and to Councilwoman Harley. You had mentioned Eastside Rising and you had mentioned a habitat. I would love to hear what they were doing, I guess, in regards to COVID-19. I didn't know whether or not this was something that was already shared previously, but I'm like, whether that you wanted to talk about it offline or such, that'd be something great to hear about what was going on the East Side.
Okay, yes, Councilwoman McCoy, that's definitely something we can discuss offline. I think Councilwoman Harley, you know, we can have a conversation. Obviously, when it comes to the projects that's going on there, you know, she knows best, I think. So I think we can do that offline. But in the meantime, is there any other question you have for Chief of Staff about the CARES Act funding?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from members of council on the CARES Act and federal funding? Okay, now I would like to open it up. Oh, okay, Councilwoman Harley.
Real quick, before we move on to Councilwoman McCoy's point, Chief Washington said for those nonprofits that applied. So that is one of the reasons why I'm going with whatever is decided upon, because I really don't know who or what nonprofits applied. I'm always thinking about the communities that I represent, and I know that they're nonprofits, and I know that what they're doing could possibly fall under that umbrella. So right now, I don't have any information to discuss other than the information that Chief Washington will be sending me. I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Harley. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open up to members of the public. Are there any comments or questions from members of the public? Okay. Going once, going twice. All right. Okay, it looks like we have a question from Council Member Bash Turner.
Yeah, this was trying to be recognized, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. Yes, this time I'd like to recognize Councilman Bash Turner. I believe we have everyone else now, Mark.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes. Yes, Council.
Thank you. When Councilmember Harley just said she's awaiting a copy of that, could we please make sure that council gets a copy of the nonprofits and whatever funding they're going to be getting, that all of council gets it?
Sure, not a problem.
Thank you.
And this is specifically for the community block grants, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, if I can make myself clear, Councilman, Mr. Chair, when I was referring to Chief of Staff, we sent it to the chair is so that it could be dispersed from all members of council from the chair. That was my point.
Yep, that's fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no other comments about federal and CARES Act funding, again, we're going to be constantly updating the public, either in committee or with press releases regarding a lot of these funding streams. You'll hear more later this week. But we do have more items on the agenda. The next item is to discuss an update on the city's community pools. This was necessary in light of the governor's latest declaration, which grants reopening for pools. So this is definitely a hot topic, and I believe we definitely need to discuss this at length about what the city's policies will be. So without further ado, is there anyone from the city to speak on?
I'll touch on that.
Okay.
Because right now, there's not a definite answer. We're still exploring whether we're even going to open up the pools. In the event that we decide we will definitely be following the guidelines of the Department of Public Health. I believe they changed some of the restrictions around pool and social distancing. So we would definitely have to follow those guidelines. My feeling is if we decide to open up the pools, and that's a big if, that, based on the percent, or I think this is a square footage type of calculation on how many kids can be in the pool at any given time, that it will be fairly low. We're talking about 50 to 70 kids at some of our larger pools at any given time. But this is something that we still have to explore. We still have to revisit how we're going to get the training for some of the lifeguards, if that's going to be possible, whether we have enough lifeguards during the time that we need to open up. All of these things we have to take into consideration. And if we do open up the pools, whether we would have to rotate kids in and out, all of this is a bigger discussion. And typically the pools don't open until around June 26th, I believe that's the date. So we have just a couple of weeks to decide. But I was just in discussions with the Director of Parks and Recreation right before I zoomed into this meeting. So we're still pondering that.
Okay, and thank you very much for the update, Chief of Staff. Now, one of the questions that's always been on top of my mind is regarding lifeguards, right? Does the city have lifeguards? Would there be enough lifeguards? What's the situation with that?
And don't quote me on this. I think if I recall, Director Kelly said maybe there would be available 15, but that's not given. I don't know even though 15 may be certified right now, that's not to say that they're available for the city of Wilmington. And so typically we go through a training process to gear up for the summer months of swimming. And so that's part of this whole conversation. Will we have enough lifeguards to cover the pools? And so I can get back to you on how many he thinks may be available, but right now I don't have the exact number.
And this is kind of ties into it, Chief of Staff, and I apologize, it wasn't necessarily directly on the agenda, but is there an update from the city about the summer youth programs, like the camp programs? Is there
so that's just one big discussion. And the mayor and I are going to meet with Kevin again, likely this week, just to have a broader discussion on what's feasible, what's not feasible, in terms of parks. I think it's probably easier to social distance in a park, depending on what that activity is. But a lot of these summer camps require that you at least have like 10 kids all at one time. And I think that probably bucks up right against the guidelines from the governor's office, like no more than 10 or just at 10. So these are, we have to keep safety in mind at all times. So.
Excuse me, point of order. I have another Zoom call. Can we stick to the agenda, pretty please?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just have another Zoom call, so I don't want to get off track.
Oh no, I've got you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so without delaying this any further, is there any other questions from members of council about these swimming pools?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Tanya, I appreciate the amount of work that the city and the directors and everybody else is doing to make sure that we do get the kids employed and have something positive to do. My concern with all of this stuff is always, you know, I see many of our people trying to follow all the rules.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a hell of a lot of enforcement going on anywhere. So when people see city people not having any enforcement, you know, sometimes it's like we're just chasing our tails here. And I wondered if you thought outside of the box, because who is supposed to be doing the enforcement? I was thinking that in districts, you know, we're not doing sheriff sales and things like that, even though we are still writing tickets for houses.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe the LNI folks in a very heavy small business district
Mm-hmm.
goes into these businesses once a week or once every 2 weeks to make sure that they're following the rules. And if they're not, write them a ticket.
Right.
Because it just seems that more and more people are just saying, not going to happen to me. I see government employees out there, and especially when we have a president who won't even put on a mask, that just aren't taking this serious enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my question. Who's going to enforce all this stuff?
Well, I mean, you know, right now, the enforcement of, are you talking about particularly when someone's in violation of not wearing a mask in public?
Well, not just that. I mean, if they don't wear a mask and if they're a business owner, and if they discourage their workers to not wear masks or allow them not to, they should be closed down. I mean, that's it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
we don't even.
that was a
give them
directive
ticket.
from the governor. You're right. The
Right.
governor said, like, you know, particularly in restaurants and all those inside retail establishments, that they should be wearing masks. So that is a violation. They're just kind of getting reopened again for the most part. A lot of these establishments are, like, particularly for the restaurants, they're takeout. So, you know, our employees, whether it's LNI or the police department, have really not had a reason to go inside those establishments. And when you see something or you hear something, let us know. But yeah, I mean, you know, we try to enforce as much as we possibly can, but not, you know, not doing it heavy-handedly. I'll have to say that. You know, it's a difficult, you know, it's a difficult thing to do, you know. I mean, you know, we're in a really densely populated area. And so to the degree we enforce this social distancing, it's difficult.
Well, of course we are. And how, you know, you get kids in water and kids in a pool. How are you going to keep kids away from each other?
Yeah.
You know, it's just not going to happen. You
Right.
can't do it in a 5-inch pool in somebody's backyard. How are you
Right.
going to do it in a big pool where kids are just going there to have fun?
I hear you. That's a legitimate concern. Yeah, that's a legitimate concern. And that's what we're talking about.
And then we're asking 17 and 18-year-olds to enforce that, you know.
Yeah, that would be difficult.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilwoman Walsh. I believe Councilwoman Oliver had her hand up first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was gonna, I'm rebelling with my council member Loretta said, Walsh said, I'm not so concerned about the businesses. I know they're not really open. I was gonna make a comment on the hot spots on the corners, the same 2 corner stores that we constituents are calling me about, and the police are sitting out there. No one has masks on. The police are out there without masks on. So I guess I'm reiterating what Councilwoman Walsh said, who's doing enforcement? I mean, it was down a message from the governor's office, and you go down, you can ride down on 9th and Pine right now. It's 20 guys out there. They don't have masks. The police are standing out. They don't have masks. So it's one big joke. It's one big joke, you know, even if they got out the car. I mean, why they stand out there and say, look, you don't have on masks. We need y'all to, I mean, they're not even 6 feet apart. Just say something to them. I just rode past there. They all just, the cops are across the street. 10 guys are on the corner. The cops are standing there. They're not doing anything. So what's the purpose of it all?
Right. So this is a conversation I would need to have with Chief Tracy.
Yeah, I just think the cops need to say, I mean, they can pull them and say, look, you don't have on masks. I mean, and I gave some masks to the store. I gave some to the guys out there. A lot of them just have them in their hands. Some of them have them around their neck. If the officers just say, look, you have the mask, we would like to see. So the word is out, because the east side, all of them have at least 4 masks apiece. The barbershop's been giving them out. A lot of them down there do have them, and I see a lot of them around their neck, but the officers are not saying anything. So I want to back that up. It's not that I don't see them with them on their neck. The officers aren't saying, because they're not 6 feet apart. The officers should say, look, you guys, you need to put on a mask, and they should have on a mask, or at least around their neck. The officers are out there without masks on, so the guys are probably just putting theirs around their neck because they don't see the officers. I just feel as though they should be doing a little bit more enforcement. I'm not talking about locking nobody up, but because they have the mask on their arm, around their neck, around their chin, the officers can say, look, you know, it's an enforcement. It's not up to me. It's the governor. It's a $500 fine. Just say some language that could kind of scare them. They're not saying anything. And if they don't see the officers, that's probably why the guys aren't wearing their masks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want a clarification around the pool situation as it relates to when a decision is made. Is the decision going to be made based on when the order is lifted? Because I can't imagine kids being in a pool practicing social distancing with a mask on. So I'm just trying to get clarity here.
Well, the order for pools has already been lifted, but the city has the ability to make its own decision regarding opening the city public pools. So the governor has already lifted the order to allow people to at least swim in the pools and you know, go to the beaches. That order has already been lifted.
Oh, okay. I knew about the beaches and I did not know about the pools. So thanks for that clarification. Thank you.
Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to state, basically, kind of like following up behind Councilman Walsh and Oliver, but I do think that we may have kind of passed that time frame. Back in April, matter of fact, my emails from April 6th asking, pleading basically to LNI and to also the WPD about putting together an enforcement plan with just dealing with essential businesses, making certain that people had understanding about social distancing and masking up and things of that nature. So we may have passed that time frame because now the government is actually allowing some of our businesses to start to slowly reopen. But I do agree, we still need to make certain that that people keep it on their face masks, because right now that's basically the only line of defense that we do have until we figure something else out. So if we cannot get the city employees to do so, then I think it would be very hard to make to get the residents to. So I just wanted to make certain that people had that understanding. It's not like it wasn't stated. It was stated early on, but you know, things just kind of like, I guess, didn't happen.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Councilman Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Walsh for bringing up some of those points along with Councilwoman McCoy. My main concern is that we're turning to this COVID group for recommendations, for suggestions. Hopefully we'll be receiving those real soon. What this COVID group suggests, the directions that we do, far as suggesting about enforcement and things like that. I think that's what us as council members and others from the city are looking for, is recommendations from this group. Now we need assistance on that recommendation. Then I think we probably need to send an email out to everyone so that we can kind of suggest for the group. But we were looking for the group to already have some recommendations. That was my impression.
Okay, and Councilman Turner, your comments definitely are noted. Again, just to let you know kind of where we fit in. So we are the legislative end of things. There is already a community mobilization group, as you know, with a lot of the city stakeholders, and then there's the city working group as well. So, I think recommendations can flow from a lot of different sources. Not saying we can't do it from here too, we can. But we are certainly looking at a variety of sources, community sources, to tell us exactly how we should do this. Because I don't know, and not every member knows about what's going on in different pockets of the city. So I think it is important that we do hear from all voices in the city.
So, Mr. Chair, what are we doing to get the input from the community? If we looking for direction from the community, what are we doing as a group to get that direction, so we know what they want and what we want, and kind of coming up with a plan together? So, what's our strategy for that?
So Councilman Turner, this strategy has been implemented since March, late March, early April. So number one, you have this working group, the city working group, as you know, has some members of council, has members of the mayor's office, has community members. And then we have the community mobilization group that has, everyone from the Urban League to United Way to health experts on it. So, that's where so far we've been getting the intel about how to proceed. I mean, look, this past weekend, we had 20,000 masks that were distributed. It was a highly successful event, very well recognized event. And so we can keep doing more of that. We just have to get, however way we can do it, hear from the community. So I certainly applaud you thinking about that, because that's what we want to do more of. And we still are doing more of that.
So the mobilization group, or are there are boots on the ground?
Yes. So community mobilization group, without going too much into detail, I know we can maybe discuss offline, but community mobilization group is about 17 nonprofit and government groups. I think it may even be more. And certainly you can be a member of that. You can certainly participate. We have John Rago from the mayor's office is on those calls. Council president typically is. I know Councilwoman Harley has been on some. I've been on some of those calls. So that's the calls you can be on. So certainly any member can avail themselves, and maybe we can kind of get this information together so that what the call-in info is.
Thank you for that that invite. But I'm more concerned with Councilwoman Walsh, what she was trying to suggest, of getting some of the public safety and the LNI at that table, so we all can know what we're going to do as far as the rest of the businesses, the stores, our community. I think we need to go a little deeper than just the mobilization that we have, and adding some people that can add some bite to it.
So noted. Okay, thank you. Okay, Council President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could share a little bit more, just for clarification to Councilman Turner's point, there was a meeting today, Councilman Turner, that had about maybe 29, 30 individuals who have youth type programs, as you would say, boots on the ground kind of organizations, and youth programs. And they convened today to discuss what type of activity can we do to address our young people this summer employment. So there's many different facets of outreach to the community, to provide input, to give us recommendations, so that we can hear it exactly from the people that it affects most. And then they bring that information back to us, and we we do what we need to do to put it into action in collaboration with the administration. And just, there is open all the time, welcoming information and ideas and suggestions from everyone, all members of council, not just those who were, on this particular committee. The committee is just to convene the information gathered from all members of council and from the community to come up with a plan of action, and also, and if needed, to legislate, to put into action. So yeah, there was a meeting today, about 30 individuals. I think Councilwoman Dixon was on the line earlier today on that call, and there's been other mobilization committee meetings that others have been on, but all is welcome. Because we need everyone right now, all brain trust, to be able to come up with solutions to address this unprecedented pandemic. So I just wanted to add that in. So your point's well taken, and it is being activated as such. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And any other comments from members of council? All right, seeing none, I would like to inquire if there's any comments from members of the public. Okay, I have one member of the public, Miss Cheyenne Miller. Can you just briefly introduce yourself?
Yep.
Okay, I don't think there's anything else I need to press.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay.
My name is Cheyenne Miller. I live in the 7th District. Just wanted to ask a question. It's a little unclear how, like, who the working groups are and what they are and what they're working on and who's giving, like if they're collectively giving work recommendations or if they're giving them separately or if they're focused on specific types of service-based things versus recommendations around public policy. Can you give some more clarification on each working group and like what exactly they're supposed to do and where we can find who is on those working groups?
Okay. So this may be a good question for Council President. Do you want to take it or?
I can.
You're on all the working groups.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, and I give a little bit of clarification as there is the City of Wilmington COVID Working Group, which is comprised of the administration and City Council, and a representative from the Hispanic and African American community, and its main purpose is to be able to address any legislative and budgetary priorities dealing with COVID. This particular group is a subcommittee of members of council to hear any legislation that's vital to COVID. And because of the strict federal guidelines, we felt it was essential that there was a group so that whatever action that we have to do, and we have to do it quickly, that it is within those federal guidelines and we could implement it as necessary. The Wilmington Community Advisory Council expanded its network of individuals who were working on the epidemic of violence from the CDC report and expanded it to address it to COVID. And so it kind of titled that massive group of individuals, which is about over 30 organizations. And they're all, many people have been invited and everyone's always welcome to come. And that's the COVID Community Mobilization Group. And so from that, there are various issues. The first thing we addressed was the health issues. Did we got the assessment and testing into the city? We got, the next was we got the face coverings. And now we're working on helping to come up with the programs, and then of course policy, and then working on relief. So we are really addressing, as the directives come from the governor, we are responding back to how do we ensure that all segments of our community are addressed and needs are included in any action that comes from the directives coming from the governor. For dealing with the pandemic. So we have to be fluid. We're very fluid because this whole pandemic is a fluid issue. Those are right now the kind of fluid open premise of how the various groups work and their major lines of responsibility, and understand it's fully open. There's no closed to meet. Everyone's invited to come to the meetings. It's done on Zoom. And I think her mailing list is almost 98 different organizations and people coming to that are invited on every meeting. And there's no standard date time because we meet because things need to be done. So we set up the next meeting date after the last meeting date so we can keep whatever comes out of that current meeting going forward and progressing. I hope that answered your question. I was trying to be clear.
I know it was a lot. And is there a place where we can find this information? Because I think what I heard was just 3 groups. I thought there was 4. And is there a way for us to like sign up for when the meetings are happening? Because I keep getting last minute ones and I don't want to be missing them.
And most of us get last minute. It is, we all, like I said, we pivot on a dime because the issue is relevant, the issue is urgent. But Gwen Aguilette is serving as administrative. You get on her mailing list. Like I said, meeting announcements goes out to over 98 people. So if you go and contact Ms. Gwen at Nagila, or either send me your information, I can have your name, put on the list. And, we're doing all we can to try to be very open and keep the information out for the public to grab it, as we call a meeting. But you can imagine this is an enormous, unprecedented situation we're dealing with. And so we're building a ship as we sail.
And thank you very much, Council President, for that clarification, because that is a question that before Ms. Miller brought that up, it has been asked before, so I certainly appreciate it. Are there any other comments from members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I would like to turn it back to final comments from members of council. Councilmember Oliver, I believe you had your hand up.
Sure, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to just elaborate on the last question. It's so funny because I've been involved with so many COVID groups because this is new and nobody has the answers. I've been on the NOW, the nurses committee. I mean, I'm getting so many emails, and then I just go on there and look on various sites. I see the Business Corporation of Wilmington, then I saw the restaurant organization for the COVID nonprofits, the NAACP, and I'm saying that to say that it's no answer to none of this, and it is all last minute, and it's all these different Zooms and Cypers, and so I was just saying, I saw some from the governor, lieutenant governor. It just seems like every day I just go in there and say, what's the what's the latest on COVID, and all this stuff pops up. So I was just stating that I don't think anything is planned. It's all last minute. And there's so many various groups. I've been on 10 of them. One of them I was on, they said, well, I shouldn't even have been on there because I wasn't a restaurant owner. So I just think it's all new. I just wanted to throw that out there that it's no answer. And I don't think city council has a list of all this. You can Google it. It's 100 of them. Working groups. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Councilwoman Oliver. And I believe we have Councilwoman Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would just say to anyone from the community, if you have a suggestion or if there's something that you would like to be considered, you can just send it. You said that you're from the 7th district, so Councilman Johnson is your council person. So I would just welcome you to just send him information. And I know this is not specifically answering your question, but it's also an opportunity for you to make sure that you're heard and you're getting it to your council representative. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, seeing no hands on this community pool issue, I'd like to move towards the next item on the agenda. We have a resolution to support House Bill 6585, which is encouraging the United States Congress to vote for the Equitable Data Collection and Disclosure of COVID-19 Act. This act simply is finally providing funding for investigating the huge health disparities in COVID-19. We've seen both locally and nationally that communities of color, includes Black and Latino communities, are the hardest hit. But currently there's not enough of a mechanism to investigate why. I think we probably know why. We know some of the leading indicators of health disparities in the Black community in general, such as trauma, such as housing insecurity, lack of access to healthcare, all those issues simply, I believe, lead to it. But we need more research into this field, and we need the health organizations to be able to do it. Now, similar to gun violence, right now from the federal government, there is no funding specifically to look into these issues. So this bill, which is pending in Congress right now, and hopefully can get voted on in June, will allow local governments and states to investigate this issue. Now, we've tried, at least from the local level, to start this conversation. Before city council persons, many on this meeting, raised a fuss. The state of Delaware was not keeping all this racial data. So, kudos to the state for adjusting that. So, we have to continue to beat the drum. We can narrow down more towards certain sectors, especially our seniors, look at what's going on with them, especially death rates. So there's a lot that we can do with additional funding. that we currently don't have. So with that, is there any other members of council that would like to speak on this? Okay. All right. So since this is a resolution, we don't need a vote from the committee, and it will be placed on the, I believe, the May 28th agenda. Is that correct, Marshall?
June the 4th.
Okay, June the 4th. Okay. All right. Okay. And the last item on the agenda, item number 4, is a resolution supporting Governor Carney's absentee ballot modifications for the state of Delaware. And, oh, actually, but before I begin, I would like to recognize Councilman Bud Friel from the 8th District. I see that he's on as well. And with this resolution, I believe it is sponsored by Councilwoman Gray. I don't see her on. Is there anyone that can speak about this resolution? Okay. All right. Well, again, with this, okay, Councilwoman Harley.
I can't speak on the resolution per se, but I was going to ask you if you could read what are the modifications that are being considered in this resolution.
Okay, so this resolution is allowing the Department of Election to essentially allow no cause absentee ballots, where I believe and it shifts kind of day by day. I know the General Assembly just went back into session, but essentially where absentee ballots would be mailed to everyone. I believe that's the ideal path. And I'm not sure if the language of the latest bill in the General Assembly is asking for this, but this is what we're looking for, because not only do we have the presidential primary in July, but obviously we have elections in September and November. So looking ahead, I think these no excuse absentee ballots where it's mailed to everyone is necessary. So that's, the long and short of what I know right now. Councilwoman Harley, is there any information, any other questions you have about that?
Thank you. So what I know was that the governor had, released that executive order stating that you could use COVID as a reason to request the absentee ballot, right? Okay.
Yes.
So I know that at one point you had to request it. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, and I can do my own research, but if you know, you can answer. So are they now saying that you don't have to request it? It's going to automatically be sent to everyone?
Yeah, so I believe that's the latest push, okay, where it would be mailed to every person. So no matter what party you're registered for, it will be automatically mailed, just because, again, a lot of folks are dealing with stressors, and this is necessary. Now, I think the sticking point, and we'll see what happens in Dover, is this requires funding, similar to everything else. Because if you have a self-addressed mailed envelope, it has to be paid for, right? So, it's probably approximately, 500,000 plus voters in the state. Every voter would have to be sent one. So there's a cost to the state. So I believe that's where a lot of sticking points coming from. And I know locally, we don't have the funds to support it. So we'd be looking to state of Delaware funding for this. So I believe that's where the sticking point is. And I definitely commend Councilwoman Gray for putting this on our radar. This is important, and we let the state know that, yes, our citizens need it the most.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe we have Councilman Friel.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, today, actually in the mail, myself and the 2 other voters in my household received a packet from the Department of Elections. It was not an absentee ballot, but it was a request for an absentee ballot, which we can fill out and use the pandemic as a reason for getting the absentee ballot. So I don't know if they're ever going to just mail you a ballot. But if you take the steps to just go ahead and fill this form out, this one-page form, and send it back, you then will get an absentee ballot by mail. So I just received that probably a couple hours ago.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Friel. Any other comments by members of council before I turn to the public? Okay, to turn to the public for comment. I believe there's a question by Mr. Kobe Owens. The floor is yours, sir.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yes, I am completely in support of this. I just want to ask one question. You said that this would also apply to the September 15th. From my understanding, the executive order only covers the presidential election and the school board elections, moving them both to July. And Councilman Friel actually just answered part of my question. The executive order said that they were going to be sending out request forms and that there was still going to be in-person voting, which would be modified due to COVID-19. But also, I was wondering what City Council is doing to advocate to ensure that our polling places are not cut back too much. I know of the list that the Department of Elections already put out, we've only have a few locations: Edison, PS DuPont, Del Tech, and Cab, or the ones I remember off the top of my head, to ensure that we're not all our polling places aren't completely closed here in the city of Wilmington, and that people still have their right to go vote.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Owens. Any other comments from members of the public? Okay, last turn for any comments or questions from members of council before we close out. Okay, all right, with that, I just want to thank those for attending this meeting. We have a lot of weighty issues, and we have a lot of issues, especially dealing with how we reopen our city, which would be very important in terms of how the state reopens. And what we have to look at is, of course, the primary concern is the safe and welfare of our citizens. We know that those who are unhoused, those who are struggling, homeowners and renters, that's a top priority as well. We continue to look at resources and game plans for that. So, do not, hesitate to email either me or council president or other members of council, if you're a member of the public, in terms of suggestions or problems that you see that we're not seeing. Okay. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Well, thank you very much. The COVID-19 meeting is adjourned. And since this is, again, more of a pop-up meeting, we will, of course, keep the public abreast because we will most likely have to respond earlier than June at this time. So please stay tuned for the announcement of the. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.
Take care.